Hey folks, it's Nate. Thanks for joining me at the art table again today. I wanted to talk a little bit more about my thoughts on the current state of manga. I am again operating off of Super Eyepatch Wolf's report on the state of Shonen Jump, which I have again linked to down in the video description. If you want to know more about what I'm talking about, I would suggest watching that video because he put a lot of work and effort into researching it, and I really think it deserves all the attention it can get. Now, what I actually want to talk about is the fact that One Piece, the longest running and most successful manga in the pages of Jump, has slipped from its first place spot in the yearly rankings. For a long time, One Piece dominated sales in the manga sphere. It was the best-selling manga in all of Japan. It wasn't even close. When I started reading manga, One Piece was considered part of the Big Three, or the three pillars of Jump. These included Naruto, Bleach, and of course, One Piece. The other two series, Naruto and Bleach, have long since concluded their runs, and have come back around for revivals. One Piece, on the other hand, has run pretty much continuously since the first chapter in the serialization released. That first chapter was released in July of 1997. Which means it has been continuously running for nearly 25 years. The ongoing narrative comprises an eye-watering 102 volumes of published material, 2 of which are not currently scheduled for release in the United States. As of this recording, a total of 1,048 chapters have been published overall. That is a colossal amount of story, and an incredible artistic achievement by Eiichiro Oda. However, although Oda is still at the peak of his storytelling prowess, the series is beginning to show some fatigue. By which I mean it really seems like the series is having trouble attracting new readers. Highly invested readers still love the series, they still keep the sales very high. However, after over 1,000 chapters of narrative, it is very difficult for new readers to look at that huge pile of continuity they have to be familiar with and say, yes, I want to read that. Even if they were to read 4 chapters a day, a fairly reasonable, approximately 1 hour time commitment, it would take them 262 days just to get caught up to where we are now. During that time, another 37 chapters would be published. Even if all of the story is good or great, which I can assure you it pretty much is, the sheer time commitment is staggering. And this, I think, is the lesson that we can take away from One Piece's fall from the top. When comparing the American comic book publishing industry to the Japanese manga industry, many people say that obviously it is harder to get into American comics because they have so much continuity baggage built up after decades and decades and decades of publishing. It's hard to know where to start. It's hard to deal with the crushing continuity that the shared comic universes have. Manga, we are told, is so much easier to get into. You simply find the first volume and read from there, instead of trying to figure out which origin of a character you should begin with, or which run by which writer and artist you need to get familiar with in order to really understand a character. I think there is a lot of truth to that. There is a real advantage to having a singular vision for a character and his or her story. However, there is also a very important strength in having a story end. As I've said before, this is one of my fundamental problems with American comic books. They never let their characters' stories end. They drag them out constantly until they become very insular, self-referential things that are very difficult for an outsider to understand without having to pick up a lot of continuity baggage. Now, American comics do get around this to a certain extent because there are jumping on points, beginnings of new story arcs where people can just sort of get comfortable and get familiar with the character, their general status quo, their place in the world, their relationships, and then begin to work their way forwards and backwards as they get to know the character better. And I think that's true to an extent. But at the same time, there are so many people who are happy to read other forms of comics that look at American comics and see this convoluted continuity, the incredible difficulty of getting to know the characters in the stories, and say, nah, it's not really worth it. And I think the fact that One Piece has hit the wall, the fact that this wonderful, exciting, interesting, and engaging adventure story is having so much trouble picking up new readers is testimony to this fact. Even if getting to know a character is as simple as finding Volume 1 and reading from there, if that character has been in print as long as Monkey D. Luffy has been in print, just catching up is a daunting task. And I know the fans say you can jump in anywhere, but the reality is most people who are not already committed to the character or at least the shared universe is going to want to start at the beginning of the story and work their way to the end, because that is how people read stories. There comes a point where committing to gathering all that story together to get a full appreciation of what has happened becomes such a daunting task that people just don't want to do it. There are other options out there they could be spending their time and entertainment money on. Old volumes are often out of print. The used copies are often very expensive. And the opportunity cost of figuring out all of the details of a series that has been running for almost 25 years is just so high that you might as well find 2 or 3 shorter series that you can get invested in and continue to follow. The attention economy is a real phenomenon. There are so many things vying for people's eyes, time, and dollars that they have to decide, in no small part, on what grabs them. And something that will keep them from being grabbed is the sheer size of the property they are being asked to invest in. Now, I don't personally have a problem with the fact that One Piece has been running for a very long time. I can enjoy the story without having to get everyone I know invested in it. I recognize that the art style and the humor and the epic scope of the story are not for everyone, and that's fine. But as American comic creators continue to try and revive the medium that they love so well, it would be important to keep the lesson of One Piece in mind. Big stories are great. Enormous stories turn off parts of your audience. Even stories that are very driven and well executed on will begin to turn off prospective readers who may love the story simply because of how much there is to get into. It is important to have an end point in mind, and it is important to put only as much story as is entirely necessary between the beginning and that end point. Trust me, the ideas you cut will have homes elsewhere if you just keep telling stories. And hey, there's nothing wrong with large, epic, decade-spanning storytelling. It's not something we get a whole lot of. If it's done well, sure, you will attract a large audience, and then some of them will eventually nope out because the story is so long they can't keep track of it anymore. There's nothing wrong with that. But if your goal is to revive an industry, that cannot be the only kind of storytelling you do. You will need other kinds of stories that are accessible to other people. Because as One Piece shows us, even the best executed story can only grow its audience for so long. Anyway, that's all I've got for you today. Let me know what you think down in the comments below. There's a like button and a subscribe button there. You can use those as you see fit. And I will talk to you later.